Welcome. This is Irene Woods. In this lesson, we're going to talk about marking a Mylar sheet to be used in silver reed knitting machines. Now we need to talk about Mylar sheets for the Studio, Singer, and Silver Reed machines. The older models, the Singer and Studio 500, 560, and 580 machines take the same Mylar sheets as the 800 series. That's what they look like. Let's see if I can get it picked up. They're very flimsy compared to the ones that come with your machine. And you do need to use a little bit of care on them when you're working with them because it's easy to bend or crinkle or just plain damage them. The major difference when you're using the 500 series machine compared to the 800 series machine is this. The 500 series, which is the 500, the 560, and the 580, will only use its side. Now, you can use stitches that are designed all the way across, a stitch pattern that goes all the way across, and it will mirror that and also knit on the left side of the bed. However, if you're knitting a very small, narrow pattern, you have to put it on this side of the card. And on the 500, 560, 580 machines, if you only have a pattern that is, say, this wide, you cannot use this part of the card for something else, or this part of the Mylar sheet. On the 500 series machines, this would be dead space, unless you're knitting a pattern that goes all the way across. When they introduced the EC1, the PE1 system, which is what the 800 series machines run on, then you can put a pattern anywhere you want. These Mylar sheets were designed to be used in the EC1 PE1 combination. And as you can see, I have patterns running lengthwise on this side and on this side. The 800 series machine will read them. The 500 series machines will only read the ones that are right here. They will not read this or this. So bear that in mind. If you have a 500 series machine, make sure that your pattern is marked right in here. This part is dead space for you. We need to talk about the marking pencils a little bit before we start. Studio and Singer originally sold a special pencil. It's called a design pencil. This one has 3 stars on it, and it indicates that the core, it's hard to show that, maybe that'll work, that the graphite inside is really quite thick, and it's used for marking wide parts of a design. I never used that one very much. We were doing primarily ferrule work, and that requires a much finer point. So this was also sold by Studio. It's called an electronic knitting machine, and it only has 1 star. Let's use this point. And it is about the size of probably a number 2 pencil, which worked a whole lot better for what we were doing. These pencils were getting very hard to find before Studio went out of business, and now they're almost impossible. We did find something that worked really well. It's called a Barrel Very Thin Silver 753. Let's see if we can get it under the light a little better. And it also has about what you would expect from a regular lead pencil. And it is silver. It really is silver. And it makes a very shiny mark on the Mylar. Oh, by the way, this also says, also ideal for marking blueprints. So it is designed specifically to use on this type of material or very thin vellum paper. Another thing that you can use sometimes, and I don't have one on hand to show you, some regular pencils, the kind that you would buy to use in school or keep on your desk, some will work, not all, and you'll just have to buy a brand or two and try it until you find one that does work. The studio readers actually need lead or marking material that is reflective. So that's why some of the number 2 pencils don't work very well. And I would suggest the number 2. You don't want a really hard one, maybe a 2.5. Because when you start getting into that very hard lead, it can actually damage the Mylar sheet. And these Mylar sheets are a little bit fragile as is, so you need to be somewhat careful with them. Okay. This is the same pattern that we used for the punch card. In fact, you can still see the little dots from where the ink bled through the pinholes. So I'm going to do basically the same thing that I did with the punch card. I'm going to read the graph, the chart, and transfer that stitch by stitch onto the Mylars. Except this is a 6-stitch repeat pattern. So I'm not going to put the whole thing on there. I could. And I used to do that quite frequently, as you can see right here. These were hat and sweater patterns. And I did fill in a whole 24-stitch width repeat. Now, some of it had to be done that way. This one is a 24-stitch repeat. That's very difficult to show you. Okay. That's the one disadvantage of Mylars, of these Mylars. They are kind of hard to see. This is a 24-stitch repeat, and I had to put the whole thing on there. This one is a 6-stitch repeat, and I could have only marked just this much. I didn't need to put the whole 24-stitch on there, but I usually do. I came into this from punch cards, and I'm used to seeing 24 stitches across, so in my mind, that's the way it needs to be. It doesn't. So we will just put a 6-stitch repeat on the one we're going to do tonight. Stay in the lines. Pretend you're in kindergarten and your teacher says, color in the lines. Don't go outside of the lines. Well, this is more important than it was when you were coloring in kindergarten. If you go outside of the lines, the card reader is going to say, oh, we need another stitch right there. And so you will get a mistake in the pattern. Sometimes a dot will do it. And basically that's what I just did. Let's see if this works a little better. These squares are so small, it's going to be hard to see no matter what we do. Okay, just like on the punch card, I marked one square in this case. Then I'm going to skip 2 and mark 1. Now in the next row, I'm going to skip 2, and then I'm going to mark 3. And then in the next row, I'm going to skip 1, mark 2, skip 1, mark 2. You do need to fill up the square. I would say probably about 3/4 full. And you can then run it through your machine before you knit, just to test to make sure. Actually, you probably should knit a very small strip to test your pattern to make sure that you did get it all in there. Okay, we're going to skip 2 rows, and then I'm going to mark 2 in this outside column. And then, just like we did on the punch card, we're going to follow this line up like so. And then the next column needs to be 3 stitches tall. And then we work back out till we get back to the edge. Now I'm going to put this little partial cross, put that in. Okay, now we need to start this diagonal column. I have to admit, my eyes get tired pretty fast when I'm doing this, and I have to take a break occasionally. And then this little square here would complete the cross. Now we need to move up to this unit. We're going to skip 2 rows. Skip 2 rows, sorry. And then skip the first stitch, mark 2, skip 1 and mark 2. Then we need 3. And then we need one. Then we also need one in the outer column. Now we need to move up to this band. And I think you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to finish it off camera and then I'll be back. Okay, I have marked all that needs to be done. I'm going to scoot this down a little more. On the Mylar that will run through the 500 series and the 800 series. This is just a 6-stitch repeat, and it doesn't look like much, but it actually is this pattern. Now, I want to show you one more thing. Regular erasers can really tear up these sheets. I don't recommend them. The old brown gum style erasers are much better than the pink pearls, but this is what I found worked better than anything else I ever tried. It's a high polymer eraser. It's made by Pentel, and it erases cleanly. Well, let's just do a little bit and I'll show you. Without tearing up your sheet. You don't want a lot of crumbs, because if you don't get it all off the Mylar, it can end up in your card reader. And this particular eraser doesn't make very many crumbs, and what it does make is really easy to brush off. It doesn't stick to the Mylar. So if you end up using this system, I would recommend that you get one of these erasers. They're not very expensive. That pretty much covers how to get the pattern onto the sheet. We're now going to use the EC1 to read the Mylar sheet. And I have actually connected the EC1 to my 580. A lot of people don't realize you can do this, but you can. What I've done, this is the plug that normally goes into the 580, into the case of the 580, this piece right here. This piece is coming from the EC1. I unplugged this piece from the 580, connected it to the EC1. I'm working in an extremely small space, so I'm going to have to show you this in bits and pieces. I can't do it any other way. This is the EC1, and right now I have it set so that the left light, or light number 1, is on left. Light number 2 is also on the left. And then this is the light that controls whether the card feeds up or down. And I have it set to feed down. This is the inspection switch. I'm going to put, this can be a little bit tricky. They have to go in absolutely straight. Okay, as near as I can tell, it's in there the way it ought to be. So I'm going to turn on the inspection light. That spins the card up. Now I'm rolling it down with this little hand wheel until the bottom line comes right on top of the card reader slot. And then I will push this button to turn off the light. That takes the card down into the machine, and we're ready to knit. Now I'm going to go back to the 580, so I need to move the camera. I'm going to bring the carriage across. I'm going to show you something that I've done with it. Oh, and before I go any farther, I'm going to turn off the inspection light while we do this. So you're hearing the EC1 right now. All right. The Studio, Singer, and Silver Reed electronic machines do not bring the needles forward when you have it set for pattern. I'm going to set the cam lever on the carriage to ferrule. Now watch what happens. Let's move this camera back just a little bit. If you go across very slowly with the front plate off, you can see the needle selection. Not nearly as well as you can on the Brother machine, but it's enough to tell me that it is bringing forward every third needle to catch the contrast color. This would be the first row on the card. Now we're ready to catch the second row on the card. You can see the needle selection again. It isn't as easy to use this to check your card as it is with the Brother, but at least it does give you somewhat of a visible reference. I just set up my 580, and this is the Mylar sheet that we were working on earlier. You can see what I have here. It's a 6-stitch repeat, so only the first 6 columns have marks. I'm going to put it in the 580 at this point. Okay, I've put the Mylar sheet into the card reader. Going to spin it, and the inspection light is on. I'm going to spin it down until it hits the first line on the Mylar. Turn off the inspection light. You can hear it click in. Just to test it, I've left the front fabric plate off the carriage so that we can see what the needles are doing. My end cams are set on 20 and 20. The needle 1 cam is in the center. Light number 1 is on the left setting. Light number 2 is on the left setting. The inspection light is now off. I have the carriage cam lever set to ferrule. And again, that's going to be hard to see. There. Put a piece of white paper under it. Okay, again, you can see the patterning needles coming forward. Not as well as on a Brother, but enough that I can tell where the contrast needles will be. Okay, now, when we hit the point where nothing is being selected, that is the 2 blank rows between contrasts. So let's slow down a little bit and you can see that, I think. Okay, so here it is selecting pattern needles. And there it is not. So this would be a blank row on the sheet. This would be another blank row on the sheet. Now it's beginning to select pattern again. Okay, we're going to go through putting the Mylar sheet in and getting it ready to knit one more time because that's the trickiest part of it. Make sure that this goes in absolutely straight. There's a series of little lines at the bottom to help you do that. The inspection light should be turned on. Use the hand wheel on the right side to spin this card down until it just lines up with the top of the card slot. Turn off the inspection light, and you're ready to go. And it is feeding through just like it should.